You think anger is just a destructive force, a sign of weakness or poor control. But what if I told you that anger is actually your most powerful, untapped resource for navigating life's biggest challenges? It's not about suppressing it or letting it run wild. It's about understanding its true language. Most people believe that having a high intelligence quotient, or quotient intellectual, is the primary driver of success. They pour all their energy into academic achievement and intellectual pursuits, convinced that this is the golden ticket. However, groundbreaking research suggests a very different picture of what truly propels individuals forward. Daniel Goleman, a psychologist who first popularized the concept, proposed a revolutionary idea based on extensive studies originating from Harvard University. He argued that your quotient intellectual, your raw intellectual horsepower, accounts for only about 20% of your overall success in life. That leaves a staggering 80% to be explained by other factors. These crucial remaining factors are what we now understand as emotional intelligence. This encompasses a set of vital skills: your self-awareness, your ability to regulate your own emotions, your intrinsic motivation, your capacity for empathy, and your proficiency in social interactions. These are the building blocks of resilience and achievement. Consider this: a remarkable 40-year study meticulously tracked students from their kindergarten days. Researchers observed their development, their choices, and their ultimate life outcomes. The findings were profound and offered a stark contrast to the emphasis often placed solely on intellect. The children who exhibited the highest levels of self-regulation at the tender age of 4, as measured by the famous marshmallow test, went on to achieve significantly better outcomes in adulthood. They enjoyed more fulfilling careers, cultivated deeper and more stable relationships, and experienced better overall health. This study highlights a fundamental truth that often gets overlooked in our achievement-driven society. It's not just about how smart you are. It's about how well you understand and manage yourself and your interactions with others. The marshmallow test, a simple experiment involving delayed gratification, proved to be a surprisingly accurate predictor of future success. Imagine a young child presented with a marshmallow, told they can eat it immediately or wait for a second one if they resist eating the first. Those who could wait, demonstrating an incredible ability to control impulses and delay immediate pleasure for a greater future reward, were the ones who thrived years later. This ability to manage impulses, to resist immediate gratification, is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. It allows individuals to make better long-term decisions, to persevere through challenges, and to build a life of substance rather than succumbing to fleeting desires. Now let's talk about anger specifically, because it's often the emotion that people misunderstand the most. When we feel anger, our immediate instinct is usually to push it down, to ignore it, or to lash out destructively. We're taught that anger is bad, something to be avoided at all costs. But what if anger isn't the enemy? What if it's actually a messenger, a signal that something important is happening within you or in your environment? It's a powerful internal alarm system designed to alert you to perceived threats, injustices, or unmet needs. When you feel that surge of heat, that tightening in your chest, that urge to confront, it's not random. It's telling you something specific. The question is, are you listening? Or are you just reacting? The majority of people, when faced with anger, fall into one of two unhelpful patterns. They either become passive, internalizing their frustration until it festers into resentment and bitterness, or they become aggressive, unleashing their anger in ways that damage relationships and opportunities. This passive approach often leads to a slow erosion of well-being. Unexpressed anger can manifest as anxiety, depression, physical ailments, and a general sense of dissatisfaction with life. It's like holding onto a hot coal, intending to throw it at someone else, but burning yourself in the process. The aggressive approach, while seemingly more direct, is equally detrimental in the long run. While it might offer a temporary release, it often alienates others, creates conflict, and rarely solves the underlying issue. It's a short-term solution with long-term negative consequences. Think about the common scenario where someone feels unfairly treated at work. They might feel a wave of anger, but instead of addressing it, they complain to colleagues or stew in silence. This unaddressed anger can lead to decreased productivity, strained relationships with coworkers, and a missed opportunity for growth and resolution. The science behind emotional intelligence suggests a third, far more effective path. It involves acknowledging the anger, understanding its source, and then channeling its energy constructively. This is where the true power lies. Consider the story of Satya Nadella, who took the helm of Microsoft in 2014. At that time, the company was widely perceived as a dying giant, struggling to adapt to the rapidly evolving technology landscape. Many believed its best days were behind it. Nadella's initial and perhaps most profound change was not a new product or a drastic restructuring. It was a fundamental cultural shift. He moved the company away from a mindset of know-it-all to one of learn-it-all. This was a powerful application of emotional intelligence at the highest level. This shift fostered an environment of curiosity, humility, and continuous improvement. It encouraged employees to embrace new ideas, to learn from their mistakes, and to collaborate more effectively. It was a deliberate move to cultivate emotional resilience and adaptability within the organization. The impact of this cultural transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. Under Nadella's leadership, Microsoft's market value grew tenfold. This wasn't achieved through sheer intellectual brilliance alone, but through a profound understanding and application of emotional intelligence principles. This example demonstrates that even in the cutthroat world of technology, emotional factors are paramount. The ability to inspire, to foster collaboration, and to adapt to change are direct outcomes of a strong emotional framework. So, how do you begin to tap into this power source that anger represents? The most potent exercise, recommended by experts in the field, is remarkably simple yet incredibly effective. It requires a moment of conscious awareness and precise language. When you feel an intense emotion, especially anger, the key is to name it with absolute precision. Don't just think "I'm angry." Dig deeper. Are you feeling frustrated, resentful, betrayed, overwhelmed, ignored? The act of precisely naming the emotion immediately reduces its intensity. It's like shining a light on a shadowy monster. Once illuminated, it loses much of its perceived threat. This is a direct application of self-awareness, a core component of emotional intelligence. For instance, if you're angry because a colleague didn't follow through on a promise, you might feel a general sense of anger. But if you identify it as disappointment because you relied on them, or frustration because it impacts your work, or even feeling undervalued because your contributions aren't respected, the feeling shifts. This precise labeling allows you to understand the root cause of your anger. It moves you from a generalized, overwhelming emotion to a specific, addressable issue. This is the first step in transforming anger from a disruptive force into a catalyst for positive change. Let's delve deeper into why so many people struggle with this. The ingrained societal messages we receive about emotions, particularly negative ones, are powerful. We are often taught to be stoic, to keep our feelings in check, and to present a composed exterior at all times. This conditioning creates a disconnect between our internal experience and our outward expression. We learn to distrust our emotions, especially those that feel uncomfortable or socially unacceptable, like anger. We see them as personal failings rather than as valuable data points. This leads to what psychologists call emotional suppression. We actively try to push down feelings of anger, sadness, or fear. While this might seem like a sign of strength, it's actually counterproductive. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They simply go underground where they can fester and cause more damage. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes constant effort, and eventually the ball will inevitably pop up, often with surprising force. Unexpressed anger works in a similar fashion. It builds pressure until it erupts, often at an inopportune moment and with disproportionate intensity. Furthermore, many people lack the vocabulary to accurately describe their emotional states. They have a limited range of emotional descriptors, often resorting to broad terms like good, bad, mad, or sad. This lack of nuance makes it difficult to pinpoint the exact nature of their feelings. This emotional illiteracy, as it's sometimes called, is a significant barrier to developing emotional intelligence. Without the ability to identify and articulate what you're feeling, it becomes incredibly challenging to manage those feelings effectively. The marshmallow test study, while focused on self-regulation, also implicitly highlights the importance of emotional awareness. The children who could delay gratification were likely more aware of their desires and better able to manage the discomfort associated with waiting. The science of emotional intelligence, as championed by Goleman, is not about being overly emotional or losing control. It's about gaining control through understanding. It's about developing a sophisticated internal compass that guides your actions and reactions. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, it's challenging. You might stumble over words, misunderstand meanings, and feel awkward. But with practice and dedicated effort, you become fluent, able to express yourself with precision and nuance. Emotional intelligence is a language, and anger is one of its most vital dialects. The twist here, the paradox that often eludes people, is that the very emotion we are taught to fear and avoid, anger, holds the key to unlocking our greatest strengths. It's not the emotion itself that's the problem, but our relationship with it. When you learn to approach anger with curiosity rather than judgment, you open yourself up to a wealth of information. Anger signals that a boundary has been crossed, a value has been violated, or a need is not being met. Ignoring these signals is akin to ignoring a fire alarm. The three specific mistakes that most people make when dealing with anger are: first, they immediately judge themselves for feeling angry, believing it makes them a bad person. This self-judgment prevents them from exploring the anger's message. Second, they react impulsively, either by lashing out or withdrawing completely, without any attempt to understand the underlying cause. This reactive approach perpetuates the cycle of negative emotions and damaged relationships. And third, they avoid confronting the situation that triggered the anger, hoping it will simply go away. This avoidance allows the issue to fester, often leading to greater resentment and a diminished sense of self-worth over time. Let's move to the concrete method, the practical application. This is where we transition from understanding to action. Remember that exercise of naming the emotion with precision. Let's expand on that. The next time you feel that familiar heat of anger rise, pause. Take a deep breath, not to calm down immediately, but to create a small space for observation. In that space, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now specifically? Don't settle for angry. Is it irritation, indignation, fury, disappointment? A sense of injustice? Try to find the most accurate word. You might even need to use a few words to describe the complex tapestry of your feelings. Once you've identified the precise emotion, the next step is to ask, What is this emotion trying to tell me? What specific need is unmet? What boundary has been crossed? What value is being threatened? For example, if you feel indignant because a friend shared something personal you told them in confidence, your anger might be stemming from a violation of trust and a need for respect for your privacy. If you feel frustrated because a project at work is stalled due to a colleague's inaction, your anger might be pointing to a need for accountability and a desire for efficient progress. This process of precise identification and inquiry is the foundation of emotional regulation. It allows you to move from a state of emotional overwhelm to a state of informed action. It's about understanding the message.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope, she bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
Not just the messenger. The single most powerful action you can take today, right after you finish listening to this program, is to practice this. The very next time you feel a prickle of anger, stop, breathe, and name it precisely. Don't judge it, just name it. For example, if your child spills juice on the floor, instead of immediately yelling, take a breath and think, I am feeling overwhelmed because I have a lot to do, and this is an added task. Or perhaps, I am feeling annoyed because I just cleaned this area. This simple act of precise naming is incredibly disarming. It takes the raw power out of the emotion and allows you to approach the situation with more clarity and less reactivity. It's the beginning of transforming your relationship with anger. The ancient wisdom traditions understood this implicitly. They recognized that emotions are not inherently good or bad, but rather signals that require attention and understanding. Modern psychology, particularly the study of emotional intelligence, is now catching up to these profound insights. Consider the impact of this on your relationships. When you can understand and articulate your own emotions, you become better equipped to understand and respond to the emotions of others. This leads to more authentic connections and fewer misunderstandings. Empathy, a key component of emotional intelligence, is not about feeling what someone else feels. It's about understanding what they might be feeling and responding with compassion. This understanding often begins with our own emotional landscape. The story of Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft is a testament to the power of a culture that values emotional intelligence. When leaders prioritize learning, collaboration, and empathy, the entire organization thrives. This isn't just about business, it's about human flourishing. The marshmallow test researchers, by observing children's ability to delay gratification, were essentially studying their nascent emotional regulation skills. They understood that this ability was not just about willpower, but about a deeper capacity to manage internal states. This ability to manage internal states is what allows individuals to persevere through setbacks, to resist temptations that derail their goals, and to maintain focus on what truly matters. It's the bedrock of long-term achievement and well-being. So when you feel that surge of anger, don't recoil. Lean in, ask yourself what it's trying to tell you. Is it a warning, a call to action, a signal of unmet needs? Your anger is a powerful guide if only you learn to interpret its language. The journey of developing emotional intelligence is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It requires consistent practice, self-reflection, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But the rewards are immeasurable: greater resilience, deeper connections, and a more fulfilling life. The next time you feel that familiar tightening in your chest, that heat rising, remember this. It's not a sign of weakness. It's an invitation an invitation to understand yourself better, to advocate for your needs, and to harness a powerful force for positive change in your life and in the world around you. This is where the real work begins. It's in those moments of discomfort, those flashes of anger, that the greatest opportunities for growth lie hidden. Don't let them pass you by. Learn to listen. Learn to speak their language. The science is clear, the stories are compelling, and the application is within your reach. Your anger is not your enemy. It is a vital part of your internal communication system. Learn to understand its messages, and you will unlock a level of personal power you never imagined. This is the beginning of a profound shift for you. You are learning to see anger not as a destructive force, but as a messenger. It's a complex signal, and understanding its true meaning requires a willingness to look beneath the surface. Many people believe anger simply erupts without cause, but that's rarely the case. There's always an underlying reason, a need that's gone unmet, or a boundary that's been crossed. Your internal system is designed to alert you to these situations, and anger is one of its loudest alarms. Think of it like a smoke detector in your home. When it goes off, you don't yell at the detector for being loud. You investigate the source of the smoke. Your anger works in a similar fashion, alerting you to potential danger or distress in your environment or within yourself. The key is to learn how to interpret the specific kind of smoke it's detecting. Is it the smell of burning toast, indicating a minor inconvenience, or is it the acrid scent of a wildfire, signifying a serious threat? This is where the precise naming of emotions becomes so powerful. Instead of just saying, "I'm angry," you might discover you're feeling frustrated by a lack of control, or resentful of perceived unfairness, or even afraid of being unheard. Each of these descriptions points to a different underlying cause and requires a different response. This detailed self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, a concept championed by researchers like Daniel Goleman. He proposed that our emotional capabilities are far more influential in our success than our intellectual abilities alone. Goleman's work highlights that while intelligence quotient or quotient intellectual might explain about 20% of our life outcomes, the remaining 80% is shaped by our emotional quotient or quotient emotional. This includes our ability to understand ourselves, manage our emotions, stay motivated, empathize with others, and build strong relationships. These are not fixed traits. They are skills that can be learned and honed over time. The famous marshmallow test, conducted over 40 years with children, demonstrated this powerfully. Those who could delay gratification, as preschoolers showed, significantly better life outcomes decades later. This ability to regulate one's impulses and emotions is not about suppressing feelings, but about understanding and directing them constructively. It's the difference between a wild river that floods and destroys everything in its path and a controlled river that generates hydroelectric power, benefiting a community. The energy of the river is still immense, but its direction and application have been transformed. Anger, in its raw form, is like that wild river. Consider the story of a woman named Clara. Clara was a talented graphic designer, but her career had stalled. She was consistently passed over for promotions, and her colleagues often seemed to avoid her. Clara felt a simmering resentment, a constant undercurrent of anger that she couldn't quite pinpoint. She believed her boss simply didn't appreciate her hard work and that her colleagues were jealous of her skills. This belief fueled her anger, making her defensive and withdrawn in team meetings. One day, after a particularly frustrating project review where her ideas were dismissed, Clara felt the familiar heat rise in her chest. Instead of letting it consume her, she remembered a technique she'd learned. She paused, took a deep breath, and asked herself, "What am I truly feeling right now?" It wasn't just anger. She felt a profound sense of being undervalued and overlooked. Digging deeper, she realized the anger was masking a fear of inadequacy. She worried that perhaps her skills weren't as strong as she thought, and that her colleagues' avoidance was a reflection of her own shortcomings. This was a pivotal moment for Clara. She began to actively practice identifying the specific emotions behind her anger. She noticed that when she felt dismissed, she wasn't just angry. She was also feeling a sting of rejection and a surge of self-doubt. She started to separate the emotion from the perceived cause. Instead of thinking, "My boss hates my work," she began to think, "I feel insecure about this particular design, and my boss's feedback triggered that insecurity." This shift in perspective allowed her to approach her boss differently. Instead of preparing for a confrontation, she scheduled a meeting to discuss her career development. She explained that she was eager to grow within the company and asked for specific feedback on how she could improve. She also started to be more open and collaborative with her colleagues, sharing her design process and asking for their input. She realized that her previous defensiveness had created a barrier, and by lowering it, she invited connection. The results were remarkable. Her boss, seeing her proactive approach and genuine desire to learn, began to offer constructive criticism and opportunities for her to lead smaller projects. Her colleagues, in turn, started to see her as a team player rather than a competitor. Within a year, Clara was promoted to a senior designer position. Her income increased by 30%, and more importantly, she experienced a significant boost in her self-esteem and job satisfaction. Her anger, once a source of misery, had become a catalyst for positive change. Now, let's delve into the fascinating mechanism that makes this transformation possible. Imagine your brain is like a sophisticated city with intricate traffic systems. Emotions are like the traffic signals, directing the flow of information and action. When you feel a strong emotion like anger, it's like a massive truck barreling down a highway, demanding immediate attention. This truck represents the raw, unfiltered emotional signal. If you react purely to the truck, you might swerve erratically, causing chaos and accidents. This is like lashing out in anger, saying things you regret and damaging relationships. However, there's another layer to this city's infrastructure, the traffic management center. This center is your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for higher-level thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation. When you pause and precisely name your emotion, you're essentially activating this traffic management center. You're not stopping the truck, but you are sending out a sophisticated dispatch to analyze its cargo and its destination. This analysis involves identifying the specific emotion, fear, frustration, disappointment, and understanding the context. This detailed information is then relayed to the drivers of the truck, allowing them to adjust their speed and direction. This process works because emotions are not monolithic. They are complex blends of physiological responses and cognitive interpretations. When you label an emotion, you are engaging your cognitive faculties to interpret the physiological signals. This cognitive engagement acts like a sophisticated GPS system for your emotions. It provides a clearer route, transforming the overwhelming roar of the truck into a manageable flow of information. It allows you to see the underlying needs being communicated. Consider the impact of this on your internal landscape. When you feel intense anger, it triggers a cascade of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This is your body's fight-or-flight response kicking in. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your vision might narrow. This is the raw, primal energy of the truck. But by naming the emotion, you are signaling to your brain that the perceived threat is not as immediate or catastrophic as it initially seemed. This activation of the prefrontal cortex can actually de-escalate the physiological stress response. You are essentially telling your body, "Okay, I see the truck, and I understand what it's carrying. We don't need to go into full emergency mode." This isn't just theoretical. Neuroimaging studies have shown that when individuals label their emotions, there is decreased activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and anger center, and increased activity in the prefrontal cortex. This neural shift is the physical manifestation of gaining control over your emotional responses. It's like the traffic management center rerouting the truck onto a designated express lane, bypassing the congested city streets. Now here's where things get truly interesting, the unexpected twist that often leaves people pondering. We tend to think of anger as an emotion that signals external threats or injustices. We believe it's about protecting ourselves from others or from difficult situations. But what if the most profound messages anger carries are often about our own internal landscape, our own unmet needs and desires that we haven't even acknowledged? The paradox is that in our pursuit of avoiding anger, we often miss its most valuable lessons about ourselves. We want to eliminate the feeling, to shut down the alarm, rather than investigate what the alarm is trying to protect. This leads to a deeper understanding of self-compassion. When you realize your anger is often a reaction to your own vulnerabilities or unmet expectations, you can begin to treat yourself with more kindness. For instance, imagine you feel intense anger when a friend cancels plans at the last minute. Your initial reaction might be to feel betrayed and angry at their inconsideration. But if you delve deeper, you might discover that your anger is rooted in a fear of loneliness or a need for consistent connection that you haven't fully communicated or met within yourself. The friend's cancellation is not the sole cause of your anger. It's the trigger that exposes a deeper, personal need. This is the unanswered question from earlier, the nuance that makes this journey so profound. Anger is not just about external boundaries, it's also about internal boundaries. It's about the lines we draw within ourselves, the standards we hold for our own well-being and fulfillment. When we are angry, it's often because we are violating our own unspoken principles or neglecting our own essential needs. The unexpected twist is that by learning to manage our anger, we aren't just becoming less reactive people. We are becoming more self-aware and self-compassionate individuals. We are learning to listen to the subtlest whispers of our own hearts and minds, not just the loudest shouts of external circumstances. This journey requires courage because it means confronting not only the actions of others, but also our own internal narratives and expectations. This process of understanding anger is like learning to read a complex map. At first, you only see the major roads and highways, representing the obvious triggers. But as you become more skilled, you begin to notice the smaller trails, the hidden streams, the subtle contours of the terrain. These represent the deeper, more nuanced messages your anger is conveying about your inner world. The resolution to Clara's story wasn't just about getting a promotion. It was about her internal transformation. She learned to trust her own instincts, to advocate for herself respectfully, and to build genuine connections. Her anger had served as a powerful, albeit uncomfortable, guide to self-discovery. It led her to confront her insecurities and develop the skills and confidence she needed to succeed. However, the journey is far from over. The practice of emotional intelligence is ongoing. There will be times when anger surges unexpectedly, when the truck seems to be speeding out of control. The key is not to achieve perfect control, but to develop the resilience to navigate these moments with greater understanding and less self-judgment. The deeper you go into understanding your anger, the more you'll realize how interconnected it is with other emotions like sadness, fear, and even joy. It's a complex tapestry, and each thread, including anger, plays a vital role in the overall design of your emotional life. The true power lies not in eradicating anger, but in learning its language and using its messages to build a more authentic and fulfilling existence. The next time you feel that familiar heat, remember the invitation. It's not an invitation to fight, but an invitation to understand. And in that understanding lies your greatest strength. This is where we start to see the profound impact of truly understanding anger. It's not about becoming a passive observer of life, but about becoming a more empowered participant. Think about Satya Nadella, the chief executive officer of Microsoft. When he took the helm in 2014, many considered the company to be in a serious decline, a shadow of its former glory. The prevailing culture was one of deep-seated knowledge, where people were valued for what they already knew. Nadella recognized that this approach was stifling innovation and adaptability. He saw that the world was changing at an unprecedented pace, and a company that wasn't actively learning would inevitably fall behind. So, he initiated a radical cultural shift, moving from a mindset of knowing to a mindset of learning. This wasn't just a superficial change in slogans. It was a fundamental reorientation of how people approached their work and their colleagues. He encouraged a spirit of empathy and curiosity, urging employees to listen to customers and to each other with genuine interest. This meant embracing new ideas, even those that challenged existing assumptions, and fostering an environment where failure was seen as an opportunity for growth, not a cause for shame. The measurable result of this transformation was nothing short of astonishing. Under Nadella's leadership, Microsoft's market value increased tenfold. This wasn't achieved through a single product launch or a clever marketing campaign. It was the direct consequence of a deeply ingrained emotional intelligence that permeated the entire organization, starting from the very top. The underlying mechanism of this emotional intelligence, particularly when it comes to anger, is fascinating. Imagine your brain is like a vast, ancient library. This library contains all your experiences, your memories, your learned responses, and your deeply held beliefs. When you encounter a situation that triggers anger, it's as if a librarian, usually quite calm and methodical, suddenly slams a heavy book shut with a resounding bang. This librarian represents your amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep within your brain that is primarily responsible for processing emotions, especially fear and anger. The slamming book is the immediate instinctive reaction. It's a warning signal, a powerful alert that something is perceived as a threat or an injustice. This initial slam is designed to protect you, to mobilize your resources for fight or flight. However, what happens next is where the real power of emotional intelligence comes into play. Instead of just accepting the librarian's dramatic gesture as the final word, you have the capacity to gently approach the desk. You can ask the librarian in a calm and curious tone, "What is this book about? Why did you feel the need to slam it so forcefully?" This is your prefrontal cortex, the executive control center of your brain, engaging with the situation. The prefrontal cortex is like the wise, experienced archivist in the library. It has the ability to access other sections of the library, to cross-reference information, and to understand context. When you engage your prefrontal cortex, you're not dismissing the librarian's alarm. You're seeking to understand the story behind it. You're asking, is this book truly a threat, or is it a misfiled document? Is the slamming of the book a reflection of a genuine danger, or is it a habitual reaction to a familiar-looking cover? This process of asking questions allows you to move beyond the initial, primal reaction. You can begin to see that the threat might not be an external danger, but an internal one. Perhaps the slammed book represents a deeply held belief about fairness that has been violated, or a fear of being unheard that has been activated. The slamming librarian is not necessarily trying to harm you. They are trying to communicate something important about your internal landscape. The unexpected twist here, the paradox that truly shifts our perspective, is that the most intense and seemingly destructive emotions, like anger, are often the most potent messengers of our deepest needs and values. We tend to view anger as something to be suppressed, to be eliminated, as if it were a flaw in our emotional programming. But what if anger is actually a sophisticated internal navigation system, designed to alert us when we are veering off course from what truly matters to us? Think about the unanswered question from earlier. Is anger about external boundaries or internal boundaries? The paradox is that it is profoundly about both, but the internal aspect is often the more critical and less understood. When a friend cancels plans, your anger might feel justified by their inconsideration, their disregard for your time. This is the external boundary being tested. But the true power of that anger lies in what it reveals about your internal world. Perhaps your anger stems from a deep-seated fear of abandonment, a feeling that if people don't show up for you consistently, you are fundamentally unlovable. Or maybe it's a need for deep connection and validation that you haven't been able to satisfy on your own, and the friend's cancellation highlights this unmet need. The friend's action is the spark, but the fire is fueled by your own internal landscape, your personal history, and your unmet emotional requirements. The journey of emotional intelligence, then, is not about building thicker walls to keep anger out, but about learning to open the doors of your internal library and engage with the librarian and the archivist. It's about understanding that the slamming book isn't necessarily a sign that the library is under attack, but that a very important volume has been disturbed and its contents need to be examined. Consider a real-life scenario. Sarah, a talented graphic designer, was consistently passed over for promotions at her firm. She saw colleagues with less experience and arguably less skill being elevated, while her own contributions seemed to go unnoticed. This bred a simmering resentment, an anger that she often directed at her managers, viewing them as unfair and biased. She felt that her hard work and creativity were being undervalued, and this injustice fueled her anger. She would often vent her frustrations to her partner, lamenting the unfairness of it all, feeling like a victim of circumstances beyond her control. This anger, while understandable, kept her stuck. It consumed her energy and prevented her from taking a more proactive approach. She was focused on the external problem, her manager's perceived unfairness, and her anger was a direct response to that. One day, after another colleague was promoted over her, Sarah experienced a particularly intense wave of anger. Instead of immediately reaching for her phone to complain, something shifted. She remembered hearing about the importance of naming emotions precisely. She sat down, closed her eyes, and tried to label what she was truly feeling. It wasn't just anger. It was a complex mix of disappointment, frustration, and a deep sense of being overlooked. Then she tried to dig deeper, to understand the source of these feelings. The external trigger was the promotion, but what was the internal resonance? She realized that her anger was intertwined with a fear of not being good enough, a fear that she wasn't truly capable of achieving her career aspirations. This fear had been a quiet companion for years, but the repeated professional setbacks had amplified it, manifesting as outward anger towards her employers. This realization was a turning point. The anger, which had felt like an external force acting upon her, now felt like an internal signal. It wasn't just about her manager's actions. It was about her own internalized beliefs and insecurities. She decided to apply the principle of learning from the librarian. She wouldn't just accept the slammed book of anger. She would open it and read. Her concrete decision was to change her approach. Instead of focusing solely on the perceived unfairness of her company, she decided to focus on her own development and communication. She began to actively seek feedback, not just the positive kind, but honest assessments of where she could improve. She started to document her achievements more meticulously, quantifying her impact on projects. Crucially, she decided to have a direct conversation with her manager, not to complain, but to express her career aspirations and to ask for specific guidance on what she needed to do to advance. This conversation was nerve-wracking. She felt the familiar stirrings of anger and frustration, the urge to blame, but she held onto the archivist's perspective. She framed her aspirations positively, focusing on her desire to contribute more significantly to the company's success. She asked, "What skills or experiences do you believe I need to develop to be considered for leadership roles in the future?" The measurable result was significant. Her manager, surprised by her proactive and constructive approach, provided honest feedback. He pointed out that while her design skills were excellent, she needed to develop stronger project management abilities and improve her presentation skills to effectively articulate her vision to higher-level stakeholders. This was exactly the kind of concrete information she needed. Following this guidance, Sarah enrolled in a project management course and actively sought opportunities to lead smaller projects within her team. She practiced her presentation skills by volunteering to present her designs in departmental meetings. She also made an effort to build stronger relationships with colleagues in different departments, understanding that broader collaboration was key to advancement. Within 18 months, Sarah was promoted to a senior designer role, with explicit responsibilities for mentoring junior designers and leading key projects. This was a tangible, measurable outcome directly linked to her emotional intelligence journey. Her anger hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed from a destructive force into a powerful catalyst for self-improvement and strategic action. She learned that her anger was not a sign of weakness, but a signal that her internal compass was pointing towards growth and fulfillment, and that she needed to pay attention to its direction. The unexpected twist is that by embracing and understanding your anger, you don't become less assertive or less capable of standing up for yourself. In fact, you become profoundly more so. You gain the ability to advocate for yourself not from a place of reactive fury, but from a place of informed self-awareness and clear intention. The anger that once felt like a chaotic storm now becomes a guiding wind, pushing you towards your true north. It's the difference between a ship being tossed about by waves and a ship skillfully navigating the currents. This journey is about recognizing that your emotional responses, including anger, are not random occurrences. They are intricate messages from your inner self, encoded with vital information about your needs, your values, and your boundaries. The challenge and the reward lie in learning to decipher this code, to understand the language of your own emotions, and to use that understanding to shape a more authentic and fulfilling life. The next time you feel that heat rise, remember the library. Remember the librarian and the archivist. And remember that the most important conversations you can have are the ones you have with yourself. We often misunderstand anger, seeing it as a purely negative emotion, something to be suppressed or avoided at all costs. But as we've explored, anger is a powerful messenger, a signal that something important is happening within us. It's a call to attention, a sign that our boundaries may have been crossed, our values challenged, or our needs unmet. Yet instead of listening, most of us fall into predictable traps, turning this valuable information into a source of pain and regret. One of the most common mistakes people make when experiencing anger is to immediately suppress it, to push it down as quickly as possible. They believe that showing anger is a sign of weakness or a lack of control, so they force a smile, change the subject, or retreat into silence. This act of suppression, however, doesn't make the anger disappear. It merely drives it underground where it can fester and grow. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it will burst to the surface with even more force. This internal pressure can manifest in physical ailments like headaches or digestive issues, or it can lead to passive-aggressive behavior that erodes relationships over time. Another significant misstep is the tendency to externalize blame. When anger arises, it's often easier to point the finger at someone else, to declare that they are the sole reason for your distress. This externalization absolves you of responsibility, but it also robs you of the opportunity to learn and grow. You become a victim of circumstance, forever reacting to the perceived provocations of others. This mindset prevents you from examining your own role in the situation, from understanding your triggers, and from developing healthier coping mechanisms. It keeps you locked in a cycle of resentment and powerlessness, waiting for others to change so you can finally feel at peace. The third pervasive error is to react impulsively and destructively. This is the classic scenario where anger explodes, leading to harsh words, regrettable actions, or damaged relationships. This impulsive outburst often stems from a feeling of being overwhelmed, of losing control. The intense emotion bypasses rational thought, and the individual acts out of pure reaction rather than thoughtful response. While this might provide a temporary release, the aftermath is almost always filled with guilt, shame, and the need for repair. It's a short-sighted solution that creates more problems than it solves, leaving a trail of unintended consequences. Recognizing these patterns in ourselves can be challenging, even painful, because they are so deeply ingrained. We've spent years perfecting these less-than-ideal responses. But the good news is that with conscious effort and a clear strategy, we can learn to navigate anger more constructively, transforming it from a destructive force into a powerful tool for personal growth and positive change. The key lies in developing a robust internal framework for understanding and responding to our emotions. Let's move beyond identifying the mistakes and focus on a concrete, step-by-step method for transforming your relationship with anger. This is not a quick fix, but a practice that, with consistent application, will yield profound results. It begins with a commitment to self-awareness, a willingness to look inward rather than outward when that familiar heat begins to rise. The very first step, when you feel the stirrings of anger, is to pause. This is not a passive pause, but an active, intentional moment of deliberate stillness. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, consciously release the immediate urge to react. Imagine yourself creating a small buffer zone between the stimulus and your response, a space where your rational mind can reassert itself. This pause is crucial. It interrupts the automatic pilot of anger. Within that pause, the next critical action is to identify and name the specific emotion you are experiencing. This is where many people falter. They might say, "I'm angry," but that's often just the surface layer. Anger is frequently a secondary emotion, a protective shield for something more vulnerable underneath. Is it disappointment, frustration, fear, feeling undervalued, betrayed? The more precisely you can name the core emotion, the more power you reclaim. Think of it like this. If you feel a dull ache, you might dismiss it. But if you can pinpoint it as a sharp, stabbing pain in a specific location, you can then take targeted action to address it. Daniel Goleman, a pioneer in emotional intelligence, emphasized this point. He proposed that accurately labeling an emotion reduces its intensity immediately. So instead of "I'm angry because my colleague took credit for my idea," try, "I feel deeply frustrated and undervalued because my colleague presented my work as their own, and I fear my contributions are not being recognized." Once you have precisely named your core emotion, the next step is to explore the underlying need or boundary that has been violated. What is this emotion telling you that you need? What is it signaling about your personal boundaries? If you feel undervalued, your need is for recognition and appreciation. If you feel betrayed, your need is for trust and honesty. If you feel overwhelmed, your need might be for support or for a more manageable workload. This exploration requires curiosity, not judgment. Ask yourself, what is this anger trying to protect or communicate to me? It's like having a detective within you, patiently uncovering the clues. With clarity on the emotion and the unmet need or violated boundary, you can then move to the fourth step, choosing a constructive response. This is where the archivist's perspective we discussed becomes invaluable. Instead of reacting from a place of raw emotion, you can now act from a place of informed awareness. What is the most effective way to address this situation and meet your underlying need? This might involve a direct conversation, setting a firmer boundary, seeking clarification, or even reevaluating your expectations. The response should be aligned with your values and aimed at resolving the situation in a way that respects both yourself and others. For example, if you identified feeling undervalued, a constructive response might be to schedule a meeting with your manager to discuss your contributions and express your desire for more recognition. This is not a complaint. It is a proactive conversation aimed at addressing your unmet need. If you felt your boundaries were crossed, a constructive response might be to calmly and assertively communicate your limits to the person involved. This requires courage, but it is far more effective in the long run than letting resentment build. The final step in this process is to reflect and learn. After you have navigated an anger-inducing situation, take time to review what happened. What did you learn about yourself? What worked well in your response? What could you do differently next time? This continuous cycle of learning and refinement is what builds true emotional resilience. It's about treating each experience, even the challenging ones, as an opportunity for growth. This is the essence of the longitudinal study that followed children for 40 years. Those who showed greater self-regulation, the ability to manage their impulses and emotions, consistently achieved better outcomes in life. This capacity is not innate, it is cultivated through practice. Let's look at some real-world examples of this approach in action, demonstrating the tangible, measurable results that can emerge when we learn to work with our anger. Consider Mark, a project manager who often found himself exploding in frustration when his team members missed deadlines. He'd yell, micromanage, and create a tense atmosphere that actually hindered productivity. He recognized this pattern as a significant mistake. His anger was not motivating his team but demoralizing them. He decided to implement the pause and identify strategy. The next time a deadline was missed, instead of immediately launching into a tirade, he took a deep breath. He asked himself, "What am I really feeling?" He realized it wasn't just anger at the missed deadline. It was a deep-seated fear of failing his own commitments to his superiors and a feeling of losing control over the project's success. He named the emotion, anxiety, and a sense of being overwhelmed. His unmet need was for reassurance that the project was still manageable and for collaborative problem-solving. He then shifted his response. Instead of blaming, he calmly said to the team, "Okay, the deadline has been missed. I understand things happen. Let's take a moment to figure out what challenges we're facing and how we can collectively get back on track. What are your thoughts on how we can adjust our approach to ensure we meet the revised timeline?" The impact was immediate and measurable. The team, no longer defensive, felt empowered to share their obstacles. They collaboratively identified bottlenecks and devised new strategies. Productivity increased, and importantly, team morale improved significantly. Mark's anxiety about project failure decreased because he was actively managing it through collaboration, not suppression or explosive outbursts. Over the next 6 months, his team's on-time delivery rate improved by 30%, and internal feedback surveys showed a marked increase in team satisfaction and trust in his leadership. Another example is Sarah, who, as we touched on earlier, felt her anger simmering because she was stuck in a role she found unchallenging, limiting her career growth. Her initial reaction was to complain to friends and colleagues, a classic externalization of blame, believing the company was holding her back. This anger was a signal that her need for professional development and advancement was unmet. She decided to apply the framework. She paused, identified her core emotion as frustration and a sense of being overlooked. Her unmet need was clear, a path for growth. Her constructive response was not to demand a promotion, but to schedule a meeting with her manager, not to vent her anger, but to articulate her aspirations and inquire about development opportunities. She asked specific questions about skills she needed to acquire and projects she could contribute to. The measurable result was that her manager, seeing her proactive approach and clear goals, provided her with a development plan. She was assigned to lead a new initiative, which allowed her to gain valuable project management experience. Within a year, she was promoted to a leadership position, a direct outcome of her ability to channel her anger into strategic action and constructive communication. Her anger had transformed from a source of bitterness into a powerful motivator for self-advocacy and career progression. Then there's David, a retiree who felt a surge of anger every time his adult children didn't call him as often as he expected. He felt lonely and neglected, and his anger manifested as passive-aggressive comments and withdrawal. He was externalizing his need for connection and failing to communicate it directly. He realized his anger was a signal of his unmet need for regular social interaction and a sense of continued relevance. He decided to try a different approach. He paused before making a resentful comment. He named his emotion, loneliness, and a feeling of being forgotten. His unmet need was for connection and reassurance. His constructive response was to call his children, not to complain about their lack of calls, but to share his feelings directly and to propose solutions. He said, "I've been feeling a bit lonely lately, and I miss our regular chats. Would it be possible for us to schedule a weekly video call, perhaps on Sunday afternoons, so we can catch up properly?" The impact was transformative. His children, unaware of the depth of his feelings, were relieved to have a clear way to connect. They readily agreed. The weekly calls became a cherished ritual, significantly reducing David's feelings of loneliness and anger. His relationships with his children deepened, and he felt more connected and valued. This simple, direct communication, born from understanding his anger, brought measurable joy and improved familial bonds. These examples illustrate a profound truth. Your anger is not an enemy to be conquered, but a valuable ally to be understood. It's a compass pointing towards areas in your life that need attention, growth, or protection. By learning to listen to its messages, to precisely name the emotions and explore the underlying needs, you unlock a powerful capacity for self-awareness and constructive action. So what is the single action you can take today, right now, to begin this journey of transforming your relationship with anger? It's simple, yet incredibly powerful. Today, when you feel that familiar flicker of anger, I want you to do one thing. Pause, take a deep, slow breath, and then with as much precision as you can muster, name the emotion you are feeling. Don't just say angry. Dig deeper. Are you feeling disappointed, frustrated, annoyed, resentful, unheard, ignored, betrayed? Say the word out loud or to yourself with conviction. I am feeling disappointed. I am feeling unheard. I am feeling overlooked. Just naming it with intent will begin to shift its power. It's the first step in deciphering the language of your own emotional landscape. This is not about solving the problem in this very moment. It is about initiating a new habit of self-awareness. It is about acknowledging the messenger, rather than immediately dismissing its message. It is about recognizing that within that anger lies a vital clue to your well-being and your growth. Remember the archivist, remember the librarian. They don't fight the stories. They understand them, categorize them, and use them to inform the present. Your emotions are your stories. Learn to read them. Learn to understand them. And in doing so, you will unlock a profound and lasting sense of peace, purpose, and fulfillment. Your anger is not a sign of your flaws. It is a testament to your capacity for growth and your inherent desire for a life lived with integrity and intention. Embrace its messages, and you will discover the most powerful advocate you have ever known, yourself.